Was professional boxing infiltrated by the mob? Was it corrupt? The answer to that is Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. Everything is great, very blessed on this end. As always, we give God all the praise, honor, and glory for that. Was professional boxing infiltrated by the mob? Was it corrupt? The answer to that is yes. And I have firsthand knowledge of that, and I'm going to talk to you about it today because something just came up. There is a major network, it's actually a television series on a case that I was involved in. I was the subject of an FBI sting operation along with Don King and a few other people. And it was a big case back in the early 80s. It was a big investigation, I should say. And I'm actually going to be sitting down with the FBI agent that was in charge of the whole investigation. It was called the Crown Royal investigation. And so I'm going to get into it a little bit today, only because it's fresh in my mind, because we just sat with this major cable network. I can't give out who it is at this point. We had a very good meeting with them. We'll see what happens. Crazy business, you never know, but they seem very intrigued by it, and they called us in. So we'll see what happens. But at any rate, it was a very interesting case. And let me tell you, professional boxing, unlike, Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NHL, even the NCAA in college sports, they never had a real ruling administrative body that, really monitored the sport. It was very corrupt on many levels. The IBF was a kind of the sanctioning body that took care, and they were corrupt. They were receiving payoffs, so on and so forth. Were the fighters, let me tell you this, the fighters were the least corrupt. There were times when they were approached, they had no choice to do certain things. They tried not to get involved. I know Muhammad Ali was approached. As far as I know, Muhammad was clean. I know Larry Holmes was concerned about certain things. Obviously, there's many stories about Don King. I knew Don King. Actually, I'm going to talk about it in this investigation, and Don King certainly had relationships on the street, no question about it. But let me tell you how this comes about for me on this end. The agent in charge, nice guy, his name is Joe Spinelli. Obviously, he was my enemy back then. He was interested in boxing for a long time. By the way, I'm going to interview him. Very interesting guy, and he really knows the details of the case. It was his investigation, his operation, better than I do. I only know my part of it, but I'll get into that. So that'll be a very, very interesting sit-down when I have with him. But anyhow, he was very interested in boxing. He was a fighter himself at one point in time, and he was upset when he got into the FBI that boxing was just corrupt, and he was absolutely right. So he decided to try to put this investigation together. He was having trouble getting it together, and then one day he happens to meet another agent, a fellow by the name of Victor Quintana, who was working undercover. He was allegedly, or he pretended to be, a drug dealer at some point in time that kind of cleaned up his act. He drove around in a Rolls Royce. He claimed to have several $1 million at his disposal, and he was trying to get involved, or he was involved in an undercover operation. And when he met with Joe Spinelli, when Victor Quintana, which was his name on the street, met with Joe Spinelli, something happened that he was able to get a green light for the investigation. As it turns out, a fellow by the name of Chet Cummins, who was involved in boxing, came to visit me and my father because Victor Quintana had gotten to Chet Cummins, right? And told him he wanted to be in the fight business and he wanted to promote fights on a high level. He wanted to meet with Don King if possible, and he had a lot of money, and he was ready to go. Chet Cummins comes to me and my father at the time. He tells us about this guy. I talked to my father about it. My father, obviously on parole, he didn't do anything at that point. So I go with Chet and I meet with Victor Quintana and a guy by the name of Reggie Barrett. Who was Reggie Barrett? He was an undercover informant. He was taken out of prison. He was around Muhammad Ali. He knew the fight business very, very well, better than Victor. So I meet the two of them, and they tell me they want to meet with Don King. So I said, all right, let's form a relationship. Tell me what you want to do. We start to talk together. As it turns out, this relationship that I had with Victor and Reggie lasted, best of my recollection, it lasted about a year. Now, during that time, he and I became very friendly, Victor and I, the undercover agent, to the point where we would play racquetball together. And I'll never forget, when we played racquetball, he would always complain about his back. He had a backache. I didn't think, to search him. Well, he was wearing a Nagra tape recorder at the time, and they were a little bit bulky, and it was strapped around his back, but I never shook him down or checked him at that time. I had no reason. I wasn't doing anything wrong. We were just, getting to know each other. He was posing as a guy, and I had told him, I said, listen, if you're in the drug business, I can't get involved with you. And this is all over the tapes, because he taped. I said, I can't get involved with you. We don't mess with drugs, can't get involved. He said, Michael, I gave it up. He said he was from South America, if I recall. He said, but I got, money, obviously. It's all cleaned up and I'm ready to go. We played racquetball together. We went out to dinner together. He drove me around in his Rolls Royce. I was in the gas business at the time. I took him on my plane to Miami a couple of times. We went to see a fight down there. I forget which fight it was. But this is how friendly we got. At one point in time, I think, my brother had a drug problem at the time. And when my brother found out that he was a former drug dealer, he was trying to get drugs off of him at some. The agent came to me, Victor came to me and said, Mike, you got to watch out for your brother. He's not in good shape. He's asking me to do things that he shouldn't be asking me to do. Now, that was the agent warning me about my brother's drug problem, which obviously I knew. But I found that, he got more into my confidence at that point, because I didn't even think he was an agent, but if he was an agent at that point, he could have locked my brother up. He could have had another agent lock my brother up, or, do something to that degree. But he never did, so he kept doing things to get even more in my confidence. And I was still leery of him. One thing I have to say, my father prepared me well. He said, when you meet somebody new, be very careful, especially if you're going to bring him to a high-level meeting, if you're going to bring him around people, make sure you know who this person is, and you do as much research on his background as you possibly can. Now, what I found out, he had 83 tape recordings on me, 83. We talked about getting into the business. He wanted to meet King. I said to him, let's just get to know each other a little better, and don't worry, I'll set up a meeting with King. In the meantime, I'm talking to my other associates, people that I knew King. I knew that he had relationships in Cleveland with some of the mob guys back there. I knew another guy by the name of Danny Pagano that knew him well. Matty the Horse knew him well. So I cleared with everybody that I can go and set up this meeting with King, and everybody cleared it for me. After maybe 7, 8 months, I think it was in 1983, it might have been around January 1983, I decided, okay, I'm ready to bring him to King. Al Sharpton, who was somebody I knew well at the time, I'm not going to get off tangent on Sharpton, but I said, Al, you're going to be the go-between. I want you to go see King, tell him what this is about, and set up the meeting. At the same time, I didn't know this, okay, but these guys, Victor had an office called TKO Productions. That's what they called it. And this was set up by the FBI. It was a business set up by the FBI. Sharpton was going up to the office trying to make a drug deal with the agent during this whole investigation. It's all over tape. It's on video cameras. As a matter of fact, I think it was on 60 Minutes, or one of the things that I did showed it. But anyway, aside from that, Sharpton gets ready, he goes and meets King, and we set up the meeting. We go to his offices, Don's offices in Manhattan, and I tell the guys, it was Victor, Reggie Barrett, and Sharpton. And I said, you guys wait here, I want to speak to Don alone a minute. We go into the office, I see King, and I say, look, I'm bringing you these guys. Oh, before that, before I brought him to King, I said, I need to verify that you have money. You got to show it to me. Now, they were, flashing money around, but, dinners and stuff like that. But I never seen any big, amount of money. The FBI actually set up a bank in, I forget which state it was in, but I called the bank, spoke to the bank officer. They showed me the account deposit slips and the account statements. Okay. So I tell King, listen, I verified they have about $15 million in the bank. I said, but Don, I've been with these guys for 8 months. I feel they're on a level. But in this first meeting that we have with them, put everything on the carpet, be straight. Don't say anything wrong, don't talk about anything that's illegal. Put everything straight, I told them. Let's feel it out and see how it goes. So I bring them in, we have a meeting. They say they want to promote fights on a big level. They say they got the money. Don was beautiful. He instructed them on how it's going to go. It was a terrific meeting. Nothing was set out of the way. And of course, we found out the whole conversation was taped. Everything, all right, because he had his Nagra on. P.S. Here's what's happening. We leave that office, they're all excited, and they finally get to King, and they think, hey, the FBI is going to have a sting operation with Don King. They're going to be able to prove that Don King is corrupt, that he has organized crime ties. They're probably going to get to the head of the IBF. They're going to get to the bottom of everything. At the same time, Joe Spinelli, the agent, is talking to Muhammad Ali. He's going to tell you about that. I'm not going to get into it. He's talking to Larry Holmes. He's talking to a number of these fighters that were concerned about organized crime's involvement in boxing. And I think some of you know that I had an interest in Vito at the Fermo at that time. And I love Vito. Till today, I love him. You know, unfortunately, he's got a little bit of dementia from getting hit so much, but great guy. I love the guy. At any rate, so we're about to set up another meeting with Don King and really start to get into everything. What happens in the interim is unbelievable. Boom Boom Mancini has a fight with a Korean guy, and he wins the fight, but the Korean guy, Dooku Kim, I think his name was, gets killed in the ring. I think I had a sit down with Boom Boom, and he told you, if you look in some of the videos, you'll see it. He told you how upset he was after it happened because, you know, that's a tough thing, man. Kill somebody in the ring, you're a professional fighter. It's not what he wanted, and it really weighed heavy on his heart, almost ended his career. But anyway, when that happened, something happened in the FBI. The FBI finally realized, wait a second, if we get into the fight business and we're promoting fights for the purposes of finding out if there's corruption and somebody happens to get killed in the ring, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be liable. We're going to be sued. It's going to be a bad scene. What happens? They shut down the investigation. It ended. All of a sudden, I didn't know that because I don't know that this is an undercover operation. All of a sudden, Victor Quintana kind of disappears. I don't see him anymore, right? Reggie Barrett, he's gone. I don't know if they put him back in prison or what. He's gone. So the operation just shuts down. And to the dismay of Joe Spinelli, he'll tell you that when I finally have a sit down, because they were close. Quite honestly, had they let this thing go, they would have uncovered a lot of things between me and King and a bunch of other things. It would have been bad, and they would have proven what they were set out to prove. So it ends. P.S. I got to tell you the aftermath of this. I get indicted by Rudy Giuliani, right? I'm on trial. I never knew that this was an undercover operation until that trial, because they were going to bring Quintana in as a witness against me in the Giuliani case. Now we start to get all the discovery. This is when I find out that that was an undercover operation. And I'm concerned. I go, oh my God, I was with this guy for 8 or 9 months. Did I say anything wrong? Did I say anything out of the way? They got 83 tapes. So what happens? We review all the tapes. I really didn't say anything that could put me in trouble, you know, at least not in any serious trouble. We go to trial. The government puts Quintana on the stand. And I'm saying he's going to bury me because, honestly, people, my thinking up until that point was that the FBI frames you. They framed my father. They lie. And I figured he was going to get up on the stand. He was going to lie and make things a lot worse than what they were. And while he was on the stand, he told the absolute truth. He cleaned me up. He said, Michael Franzese never got involved in criminal activity with me. He never talked about crime. He never did anything wrong. He never committed a crime. And I'm watching the jury looking at the FBI. Now, he's a government witness saying these things about me. I got acquitted in that case, and I believe strongly until today that it was that FBI agent, Quintana, who told the truth that went a long way for me being acquitted in that case. And believe me, if I would have lost that case, I would have gotten at least 50 years. I wouldn't be here today. So that's how it ended. And then Quintana got in touch with me later on. We actually became friends. And then Joe Spinelli got in touch with me later on. I found out that he was in the grand jury on that same case against me. And the prosecutor was overzealous and wanted him to say some things about me that weren't true. And he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. He was straight. He told the truth. And I got to tell you, you know, there's certain defining moments in your life. And when I found that out, that these agents told the truth, it really mattered to me. It meant something to me because, again, up until that time, I thought they were all bad. They all lie. They're all out to get us. They'll do whatever they have to do to get us. And it meant something to me. It really did. We're friends until today. And another thing that I realized, when I first sat down and found out that he was going to be a witness, I thought back and I said, oh, the reason he came to me, you know, to tell me what my brother was doing. He was just trying to get further into my confidence. He didn't really care about my brother. But as it turns out, I found out he didn't want to hurt my brother. They were focused on the investigation at hand, and they weren't interested in anything else, and they weren't going to create anything else. There was no animosity. And you know what, people? I really learned something about that. You know, you got to give people a chance in life to really prove to you who they are. I really mean that. You know, and I always thought all cops were bad. I always thought all FBI agents were bad. All prosecutors were bad. And my experience after the fact was that that's not true. A lot of them are good. They do their job. They take an oath to do their job. And they do their job right. They're not going to go out of their way. They're not going to frame you. They're not going to create information. There's some that do. There's no question about it. There's good and bad in everything. We understand that. But there are a lot of decent people out there in law enforcement and in the Department of Justice. And, you know, to bring up something else, a lot of you people out there have been saying, oh, we saw you testify in front of the Senate. Yeah, it's up there. You know, I did testify. Why? Because I was the subject of this investigation and I was subpoenaed to go in and testify. And I knew that the investigation fell apart, that there was nothing to it. Nobody went to jail. Nobody got indicted. Nothing happened because the investigation fell apart. All I did was go in and talk about the same thing that I talked about during that investigation. Nothing more. And so all of those people out there that were so fast to jump, oh, we saw you testify. Yeah. Listen, I never backed off the fact of that, but this is why. They got me in because I was the subject of an investigation. There was no way I could say I didn't know anything about it. And quite honestly, at that point in time, I had made my decision to walk away from that life. And that was it. So that's how that Senate investigation hearing came about. Joe Spinelli testified in front of a lot of guys testified. But again, these congressional investigations, normally they don't go anywhere. They're not there to indict people. They can make recommendations, but that's about it. But everything that needed to be known was known through this investigation. And they talked to a lot of guys. There was Corky Vastola. I'm not going to mention everybody. There were other guys involved in this. It was all over tapes and everything else. So that's the story. Do with it what you want. Think about it what you want. But I'm just giving you a reason why I was subpoenaed in that hearing at that point in time. So that's it for today. It's going to be very interesting when I do bring Joe Spinelli in because he really has the entire story of how this came about. And listen, if you want to hear more about it, okay, and want to hear some, because I just skimmed over this thing. If you want to hear more, the Andiamo Showroom on February 18th. I'm going to be appearing there. We're going to have a big event. I'll be speaking. We're going to do a VIP signing, VIP photos. Going to do a big book signing. And, of course, I'll answer all your questions. And on the 15th at the Andiamo restaurant, we're going to be doing a wine tasting night. So if you're in the area, come aboard. I know tickets are almost sold out for the event. The restaurant wine tasting, I don't think you need tickets. I don't know how that goes. Just call up the restaurant, and hopefully I'll see you there. We'll have a glass of wine. We'll share some stories back and forth. We'll have a good time. Joe Vaccari, the owner of Andiamo, great guy. It's in Warren, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. We're going to have a great time. So that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. And how do I always leave you? Same way. Be safe. Be healthy. God bless every one of you. And yes, I'll see you next time. Take care.